too, and it's awkward. But thank you. As London mentioned, it's a privilege to be here with you all today. I'll just go ahead and get started by saying, if you've ever been in my shoes when you're given a presentation, engagement means a lot. So feel free to ask questions, raise your hands, and we'll make it a little bit more interactive with that. So as mentioned, I have many years helping students successfully study and pass the CPA exam. With that, there's been a lot of changes throughout the years to the CPA exam and the profession. My goal today is really to help you all understand how you can set yourself apart by making yourself more competitive. Primarily, you're going to hear it over and over and over for how to sit for the CPA exam as soon as you're eligible, pass it, and not only pass the exam, but let's pass it the first time, and then get on with your life and start reaping the rewards of a healthy, thriving career as a CPA. So that's really what we're going to be talking about throughout today. So here's my information. If you guys can too, if you want to scan this QR code, I know many of you also RSVP'd ahead of time, but at any time, if you want to scan that at the end or right now, every semester, I collect all of the students that have scanned my code and I give a full scholarship towards one of our full courses, which you'll see is about $1,500 in value. So anyone who scans that will also be eligible to enter into my exclusive scholarship drive, in addition to the one that we do as a company on our website. So before I start getting into kind of the meat and potatoes of today, I do want to provide a little background on who UWorld is. We've been in business for the past 20 years, primarily started out in the medical and nursing profession. So we really skill in helping students study for high stakes exams. Our current CEO and president and founder was a student studying for the USMLE, right? So he was a medical student and he was studying for that exam and really struggled with the prep materials he was going through. He started writing his own and he started outperforming others, his peers. And so naturally, what do they want to know? What are you doing differently? What are you working through? Ended up partnering with his brother and a roommate. You know how these stories go. Founded UWorld. From that point on, we also do nursing and students in pharmacy school. About 5 years ago, entered into bar review, so our future lawyers. And then about 3 years ago with the acquisition, you may have ever heard of Roger CPA Review, entered into CPA. So that's where I came from. I came from the Roger team through that acquisition. So we've helped over 2 million students not only study, but successfully pass a wide variety of, as you heard me say, some of those, what we consider high stakes exams, right? These are the exams that can make or break either a student or a professional for the next level in their career. Specifically for CPAs, I'll share more later, but we really take a lot of pride in our 94% CPA exam pass rate. We also help students pass 3 times faster. So the goal is that you understand the information, apply it well on exam day, and then, as I mentioned, pass and get on with your life without overstudying. There is such a thing as overstudying and overwhelming yourself for the CPA exam. Our goal with how we approach the material is that we want to ensure that not only you do well in the exam, but we're going to teach you the critical thinking skills that you're also going to be applying well into your profession through the material that we teach. Last note, we are a trusted partner with a number of the firms that you may all go work for or that are recruiting here. Mentioned Malden Jenkins is one of them. Here we are in the room. So what that means is if we partner with your future employer, oftentimes they will pay for the full expense of our program, or at minimum do some sort of reimbursement and help you cover the expenses that come with the CPA exam. So I do welcome any questions you might have on that. So today's agenda, so first we're going to start, why becoming a CPA, because the CPA exam is part of that. What does the current exam look like and what's the 2024 exam? What are the different pathways that you may take for your study pathway given these upcoming changes? And then of course at the end, I'll share a little bit more about UWorld and how we're uniquely different in the CPA review course space. So let me first start with asking a question. How many of you, if it comes to the CPA exam, you've really done your research, you feel like, I know the exam components, I feel really good about it, I'm really educated. I'm actually here to see if I can learn something new because I feel pretty confident about it. How many of you? Yeah? Kind of a little bit-ish? Okay. How many of you are eligible to sit for the CPA exam this December? So you have 120 semester hours and in accounting to sit.
Anybody that's graduating this December.
This December. Okay, yeah, so graduating. And then what about May of next year, 2023? Fall of next year? 2024? Okay. 2025? Yeah, Okay, all right, good. So I've got something for all of you there today. Okay, so first, the CPA and public accounting in general and accounting in general is a really exciting profession to enter into right now because it is an evolving and growing profession. You'll see here there's a wide variety of really exciting things, different areas of specialization. It's evolved significantly over the years that it's not what it used to be. A lot of technological advancements, you're going to hear a lot of that today that's pushing primarily most of the changes on the CPA exam, including some inclusion of data analytics and different industries that you can explore. So as the profession changes, that really is going to push the changes on the exam. It's not the other way around, right? What is tested on the exam does not change the profession. It's the other way around. And in many ways, when I start talking about the exam changes that are coming up, it is because of this rapidly changing profession. So with the exam, every time it changes, it needs to adapt to the knowledge and skills required of newly licensed CPAs. Of course, the primary is always that it's going to ensure it's going to protect the public interest. But then you're going to see here, it's going to respond to the needs of today's marketplace. Simply put, as you enter into the profession, what you're doing today looks significantly different than a few years ago, 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. In many ways, my opinion, what you will be seeing on the future exam is actually just catching up to the profession. So a lot of times as students start to see the new sections or the new components, they think, well, this is kind of what we're learning in school already. It's just now hitting the CPA exam, and that's a little bit of a surprise to them. You want to pass the CPA exam, and why I make it that it's your competitive advantage is because there is a significant amount of data that proves and shows that your pass rate and your performance on the CPA exam is the best and the more strongest when you sit for the CPA exam as soon as you're eligible, okay? So I'm hitting you guys all with, there's a lot of data. The folks that write the CPA exam, they're called the AICPA. They give us data as CPA review providers to indicate and show this. Also, we work with a lot of your partner firms, recruiters, corporate, and government. Whenever we meet with them, and I'll say, hey, I go back on campus a lot, I'm talking to the students, what would be the most important thing you would want us to share with them and convey this message? Across the board, it is, please tell them as soon as they're eligible to sit for the exam and qualify that they get it out of the way and most likely get it done before they start work if possible. We are even impressed if they have one part done, 2 parts done. So maybe you're in the process. I would even go as far as to say, put on your resume, if you do not have it already, eligible, CPA exam eligible, fall 2023. And hopefully after today, if you had that on your resume and you were talking to a recruiter, they were to say, oh, I see you're eligible fall 2023. Can you tell me a little bit more about your CPA exam plan? You would be able to articulate that hopefully after today. Okay, so you definitely want to forward think, get it done as soon as you can. The second is for a lot of the recruiters and a lot of the companies that you're going to go work for are going to provide a substantial bonus, typically if you pass the CPA exam early on. How many of you, just say the numbers, if you're aware of a bonus, maybe you've heard about it, even if it's like a rumor. Have you ever heard of kind of some of the bonuses that employers provide? What numbers have you heard, if you've heard anything?
$1,500.
Yeah, 1,500 more. Okay, so I've heard some of our partner firms that we work with, if you pass the CPA exam before you start employment, it's a $5,000 bonus. Okay, if you pass the CPA exam within the first year, it's about a $2,000 bonus. If you pass the CPA exam in your second year, you're looking at about $1,000. After the second year, the conversation's changing. Okay, it's, why did you pass the CPA exam at this point? But remember, you're working, you're busy, there is no better time than when you're still a student. I'm going to also say here for number 2, I know that it sounds like the incentive is with the firm. Pass the CPA exam and become a CPA for you, right? So if you're sitting here and you're like, my future employer or where I think I want to work doesn't really require a CPA, I would still recommend pass the exam. You've come this far, you have all of the knowledge. No one can ever take that away from you. And if you have to think of the long-term value, a lot of times that's what students, we forget, right? It's the long-term value of it. There's also more data that shows that over the lifetime of your career as a CPA versus a non-CPA, so an accountant with non-CPA, as a CPA, you can make almost $1 million more in the lifetime of your career because of that credential, right? So do it for yourself. My last point, in all of the years that I've been doing this, I have never met someone who said, I really regret getting the CPA exam out of the way early. Okay, it's always the other way around. And then here, the longer you delay, the more missed career opportunities, right? You go work for your employer, they can bill more, you're going to start having more mobility, so you'll have a lot of long-term value and get a jump on it. Okay, so first what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to understand where you are in the process. That's going to be my goal here today. What is tested on the exam? And then given that knowledge, what can you do to set yourself up for a successful game plan? So we're going to start first with meeting your state CPA requirements. I'm not going to talk a lot about the state requirements for licensure or the exam. I do welcome any questions you might have. If you didn't know it already, each state's different. It's really exciting from a CPA review point of view, right? Each state's different, each has different rules and requirements. I will do my best to help. But you'll see here the basics with Georgia. The first and foremost advantage is Georgia's considered a 120 state to sit. So what does that mean? You need 120 semester hours to sit for the exam. You do need 150 in order to get licensed, but your first step is to get to the 120. What does that mean? As you're pursuing the extra 30 units to get to the 150, you can start studying for the exam. If you choose to pursue a master's of accounting, a math, an MBA, etc., you can start studying for the exam in tandem with those courses. It's a fabulous route for students. You want to gain the competitive edge. You graduate 150 done, CPA exam done, you are absolutely ready to hit the ground running for employment, okay? So you do need 120 to sit. You do have some application fees. There is no ethics exam here in Georgia, so some states have that's an additional exam that you might have to take. And you do need 1 year of experience under a licensed CPA in order for them to sign off overall for your experience. But your main thing here for as far as the exam qualification goes is the 120. Now we're going to spend most of our time setting your CPA exam game plan. All right, so let me ask first and foremost before I start talking about the current exam, what is the score you need to get on the CPA exam in order to pass? 75, okay. So 75, when you're in school and you get 75 on an exam, does that feel great? Mm-hmm. No. on the CPA exam, winning. Okay, so remind you, if you've ever heard of it, there's an award. It's called the Watt-Sells Award. If you've never heard of it, here it is. It is an award given every year to the students, the top 100 students that got the highest scores on the CPA exam. Okay, they get this Elijah Watt-Sells Award. My compliments to the Elijah Watt-Sells winners. However, in my career history, when I meet students who pass with a 76, 77, 78, they are a lot more excited than the Watt-Sells Award winner. They're like, I did exactly what I needed to do. I got my 75 and I moved on, okay? So keep in mind, when you pass this CPA exam and you become licensed, what's on your wall in your office is not your scores, it's not your transcript, it's that you are a licensed CPA. So keep that in mind as I start unpacking all the 4 parts. Current exam as it's structured today, for those of you that would be qualified to start the process or start sitting for some parts of the exam now, all the way up until December of 2023, this is what you're going to see. Even if you are not eligible to sit for the exam in this current structure, I still recommend that you kind of take note because this will also help influence what we're going to see for 2024. Current CPA exam broken into 4 parts: audit, BEC, which is called business environment concepts, regulation, that's going to be a lot of your tax and B law. Regulation will often be called the tax section, but don't forget there's B law in there. And then you have FAR, financial accounting and reporting. So if we break them up even a little bit more, audit and attestation, very straightforward. It's what you're going to be learning in your audit courses. Okay. With BEC, it's a little bit of a medley. That's the word I'll use. It's a medley. BEC, you will have cost accounting is in the BEC section, and BEC also includes a written communication component on today's exam. FAR is going to be your concepts that you're learning in your Intermediate 1, Intermediate 2, Intermediate 3, because I think you guys also offer Intermediate 3, Advanced Accounting, and government nonprofit is all in the financial section. And then regulation, as I mentioned, is your tax and law. First and foremost, if I set any classes and you're like, didn't take them, or those are elective, first, you don't want to worry about it because we have thousands of students in our program at all times. We don't know what programs they came from. For example, government nonprofit, at many schools, it's an elective. Some schools, it's a requirement. So we're going to teach you what you need to know specifically for the CPA exam based on some of those components. Reputation-wise, you'll probably hear it far the most. Everybody talks about it as the big, bad, ugly. That tends to be the one. It's not necessarily that it's the most difficult. It is the most time that you would spend in a CPA review. So when you're at UWorld, this is our biggest book. This is the most hours. It's the most content. It's just the sheer amount of content that you have to learn for it. On the opposite side, BEC is the smallest as far as the review course goes. Do not underestimate thinking it's the easiest because of that. It can catch up on a lot of students, and BEC can be quite difficult for them given the concepts. Each are a 4-hour exam. You'll see that they are broken up into multiple choice questions and task-based simulations, which I'll go over here in a moment. Multiple choice questions, we all know these. We've seen them since we were young. Pick A, B, C, or D. You move through them rapidly. Task-based simulations, they're going to push your higher critical thinking skills. They're going to be a little bit more difficult, workable problems you're going to be spending time working through. And then there you can see right there for BEC, we've got 3 written communication component. How many of you have heard of the AICPA blueprints? By show of hands. Yeah, I know my faculty have. They've heard of the blueprints. Okay. So the AICPA blueprints, if there's one thing you walk away from today, I hope it's this, like, oh, I get it now, the blueprint. The CPA exam blueprints are written by the AICPA, the folks that write and the CPA exam. This tells us, as a CPA review provider, exactly what we need to teach you and train you on in order to successfully pass the CPA exam. Okay, so it's the blueprints, it's everything that we do. It'd be like going to class and not having a table of contents or a syllabus or an index. You don't know what direction it's going in and why. Do I expect everybody to go open up the AICPA blueprints and look through them? No, that's our job as a CPA review provider. But I do think it's important that you know, because this is what's dictating the exam. So every few years, the AICPA solicits feedback. And they're really looking for feedback from your professors, from candidates, but most importantly, the next generation. Who's hiring the next generation? Not just public accounting firms, right? So that, of course, they have the big 4, local, regional, government, corporate, across the board. Who's hiring that next generation of CPAs? And what they're seeking in that feedback is, they say, this is what we're currently testing on the exam, and this is how we're testing it. We would like your feedback. Is it hitting the mark? Okay, so is this hitting the mark? And a few years ago, they came back saying, not really, not enough, okay? And the feedback was that the skills were upskilling more in industry, and we need to push for greater critical thinking skills for our new hires. What you see on the exam and how you're tested is meant to only test you what you need to know and the skills you need to have as a newly licensed CPA. It's defined as within your first 2 years on the job. Okay, so just, they're not testing you at things you need to know at partner level, 5 years in, just what are the skills and components for a newly licensed CPA? It's actually, there's an acronym, it's NLCPAs is what we have in our world, okay? So what they've given us with the blueprint says, this is the task at hand that you're gonna be tested on, so this is what we take, and then these are the 4 skill levels that you're gonna be tested on. If we see the task is a remembering and understanding level, that's a basic critical thinking skill, you're only going to see that as a multiple choice question. Okay, so we're going to show you as a multiple choice question, and that's what you're going to get on the exam. Why am I telling you that? If you do want to go take a peek at the blueprints because there's a concept you're particularly nervous about, let's say you really struggled with it in school, you just heard me say it's on the exam, you want to take a look at the blueprints, take a peek at how it's tested, and that might help ease a little of your anxiety. Next level is application level. If a concept is tested at the application level, you're going to see that as a multiple choice question or a task-based simulation. And then once we start getting up into the higher critical thinking skills, analysis and evaluation, you will only see those as task-based simulations on the exam. Okay, so you've got multiple choice questions, task-based sims. Everybody talks about task-based sims a lot more is the panic. The only section right now that goes to evaluation level is audit. And we don't anticipate that changing. So when you talk about this top level of testing your evaluation skills, it's only going to happen in the audit section. Any questions on the blueprints? Now you all know, right? So if you hear it, you know. Current CPA exam structure, again, this does indicate for the future. So when you take the current CPA exam, and they do anticipate that this will stay the same as far as the structure, they're not trying to overly shake everything. You will see 5 testlets. So a lot of students are like, okay, it's a 4-hour exam. How in the world is my 4 hours going to look? Well, this is how it's going to be. So you have testlet 1 and testlet 2. You're going to take a bunch of multiple choice questions. We're going to train you on those multiple choice questions to average about a minute to a minute and a half per answer. So keep in mind, you do not have to be a genius to pass the CPA exam, but you got to run a really smart race, right? Because the clock is always going and you're hopping. So think of all that stuff that I said in FAR, right? Intermediate 1, 2, advanced, intermediate 3, government, nonprofit. It's all bundled up in multiple choice questions in any order. Okay, so you want to run a smart race. Then we get into testlet 3 and 4. Testlets 3 and 4, you're going to start seeing your task-based simulations. We're going to train you up that you're going to spend about 15 to 20 minutes per task-based simulation. So these time recommendations are what we recommend and how we help kind of get you ready for the exam. That's not dictated by the AICPA. By all means, if you're ahead of schedule, you can jump. And then testlet 4 for FAR, odd, and reg, you're going to see more task-based simulations. And then in BEC, way down here, your last testlet is where you'll see written communication on today's exam. Okay. Now you get a halfway point, 15-minute freebie break. The reason why I say that with a smile is because the clock stops. You have a 15 minutes, walk around, take a break, take a breather, and the clock stops counting down. You can absolutely take a break any other time in those 4 hours, but the clock is going to continue to run. Okay. Once you pass the test, once you move on from a testlet, so you're done with testlet 1 and you go on to testlet 2, you cannot go back to testlet 1. So it's going to continue to force you through the CPA exam. Hence why we have to train you on time management to run a smart race. Okay, so now we've got the old exam out of the way. Let's start talking about the new exam. How many of you before today have heard that there were changes coming to the 2024 exam? Okay. How many of you kind of feel comfortable understanding the changes, or maybe you've heard about them, you just don't know what they are? More? Okay. So the CPA exam, as I mentioned, the profession's changing, the exam must too. What we're doing is we're going to what they're going to start referring to as a core plus discipline model. That's going to be something for those of you 2024 and beyond, you're going to get really comfortable hearing the core plus discipline model. That's going to be what we're all going to be saying. So you have a strong core. Technology is going to be throughout the entire exam. There was some early discussion on should technology be like its own section? And the feedback was no, it needs to be permeating throughout all of the CPA exam, not its own section. It's going to be more reflective of the reality of the practice. I'm also going to say it's adaptive and flexible. So there's a lot of new concepts that students are like ESG, there's some new things coming on. When we're ready to start putting more on the exam, maybe they just add a 4th discipline, for example. The old model, you can't really change and move very much, so this allows a lot more flexibility within the industry. So what's going to happen? You are all still going to sit for only 4 parts. That will remain the same. Everybody will sit for 3 core sections. No matter what, you will all sit for accounting, which is FAR, audit, and tax. Those are the 3 core parts. No matter what, everybody has to pass with a 75 or better. Beyond that, you get to choose your discipline or your 4th part. Okay. Your 4th part and your discipline could be BAR, business analysis and reporting. So kind of an extension of some of the FAR material, which I'll show a little bit more in a moment. You may choose ISC, which is information systems and controls. Okay. So I'll share a little bit more on that in a moment. Or you may choose TCP, tax compliance planning, an extension of reg. You can go in any order you'd like. You can start with your discipline and then your 3 core parts, then discipline, any order you'd like. Once you've selected your discipline and passed your discipline, that's your discipline. There are no extra credit points for taking the other disciplines and sitting for 6 parts of the exam. Crazy, right? Some people ask, like, can I be a super CPA if I pass all 6? No, you just pick one discipline and you get it done. What also is important here is same as the current exam, you still have 18 months to pass all 4. So that's a year and a half, 18 months to pass all 4 parts of the exam. Sounds like a lot of time, it will sneak up on you. So we'll talk about some study plans for that. The other is that once you pass this exam, whether you pass a little of the new exam and the old exam or just the new exam, you are still a licensed CPA, the same as everyone else CPA. You do not become a CPA ISC. Well, I'm a CPA tax compliance and planning. It's not an extra acronym next to your CPA. It's just a CPA is a CPA. Another point of feedback that I get asked a lot from schools, and then the firms ask too, is a lot of the students want to know if the firms are attracted to one particular discipline or not, right? Because you get a choice. At this time, they're not really giving us much info on that other than saying, we just need them to pass the CPA exam, right? So pick a discipline, pick the one you're excited about, and go after it. I was just giving a presentation to a student, and we were talking about these changes, and she came up to me, and it was really motivating. And she said, I'm a tax student, and I'm really passionate about tax. I'm really excited about tax. On the current exam, there's only one part tax, which is regulation. She's like, but I see this, and I actually get 2 out of my 4 parts on the CPA exam are tax, which is something that I really like and I'm passionate about. So I'm actually more excited about the future model than I am today, because I feel like I have a little sense of control over it with the 3 disciplines. So how many parts do you need to pass? 4. Okay. How do you choose which discipline is the best fit for you? This is kind of a guide here. So you'll see ISC, Information Systems and Controls, really great for candidates that are interested in assurance or advisory. You'll see their business processes, information systems, information security, governance, a lot of technology in here, IT audit. I will say, if you remember on the slide where there's a balance of multiple choice questions and task-based simulations, on this new exam, right out of the gate, ISC is a little of the newest. It's going to have a little bit more multiple choice questions, a little less task-based simulations right out of the gate, for what it's worth. BAR, candidates interested in assurance or advisory, financial statement analysis and reporting, financial operations management, technical accounting. And then I already mentioned earlier, tax compliance and planning, tax, individual tax, personal financial planning is new on the CPA exam, so that's a new topic coming under tax. And entity tax compliance and planning. Curious as you all kind of absorb all of this, how many of you looking at it are like, ISC's kind of caught my attention, piqued my interest? All right, what about BAR? What about TCP? Okay. You guys are you're in line with everyone else across the country. BAR right now is tending to be the one that's tracking for students the most. I think as we get into a little bit more of the IT audit, more AIS courses and some different courses, I think we might see a little bit more on the ISC section, but that's kind of the current trend right now. I see a lot of folks taking notes. I'll leave this one up for a minute. Any questions so far? Like there should be a pop quiz on all these acronyms I'm throwing at you guys. AICPA, CPA, TCP. All right. And I will send everybody an ebook too on all these 2024 changes too, in case you didn't get to write everything down. Okay, so what is happening? How are we going from the current exam to the future exam? And basically kind of what does it mean for all of you as far as the content goes? So here's what you see in this visual. Here are the 4 parts of the current exam. Think of it this way. I know it's cheesy, but think of it this way. It's like we're moving from one house to the next. We're taking all the furniture with us. Some of the new rooms are going to be fully furnished right out of the gate. Some of the other rooms, we're going to have to go shopping. Okay, that's the easiest way for me to put it, and they're empty. So what does that mean? Audit in blue, everything on audit is going to go to the new audit core. And some of what's in BEC today is going to go into the audit core. You'll see right there, if you notice right out of the gate, BEC is being broken up. BEC is going away. So what that means is written communications going off the exam, which is a big one. But everything that's in BEC today is going to be broken out through the other parts of the exam. It's just not going away just to go away. It's being redistributed. So audit core will get a little bit of what's in BEC today and audit. ISC, which is kind of an extension of audit, is going to get some BEC, but then you see how it's a lighter shade of blue. That means it's brand new. So it's not coming from anywhere else right now. It's brand new. So we have a team of over 30 CPAs, academics, content writers working on these new areas to make sure that you all are ready for that new area. FAR, everything from FAR for the most part is coming straight over to the core. The more advanced areas of FAR are going to go up into BAR. So think of it as an extension. BAR is kind of a more advanced FAR. Government nonprofit almost entirely is going to go to the bar section. That's important to note. Right now it's all here. You would only see government nonprofit. For the most part, there are a few exceptions. Most of government nonprofit is going to go up into the bar section. And then you see reg down here. Most of reg is going to go here. The more advanced concepts in reg right now are going to go to TCP. And then we have another lighted shaded area of new material that we're writing, as I mentioned earlier, like text, the planning. So you guys can kind of see where it all shifts throughout. A lot of times, this is obviously for my academic partners and professors. This slide's the one we spend a little bit more time on. As students, you know that your content and your curriculum will be evolving as it goes through it. Okay, so what happens if I'm stuck in between, right? First and foremost, I've already said it, get started with the process as soon as you're eligible. Do not worry about being what I call stuck in the transition. We will get you through it. Don't pause and push the brakes just because the exam is changing. NASBA and the AICPA released what's called their transition policy. From our perspective, this is the best path forward that they could have come up with given the significance of the changes, right? Because there was a lot of different considerations. What's going to happen? If you sit for and pass audit, regulation, or financial before January 1, 2024, in January and beyond, you will get credit for that core part. So if you sit for audit today, or you sit for audit within your 18 months out, on the other side, they're going to look at your let's say four boxes, and they're going to say audit done. You did not take the new audit core part, but you passed audit already, and so they're going to give you the equivalent credit for it. Make sense? Audit, FAR, and reg, you're going to get the equivalent in the core. BEC, because it's going away, if you pass BEC before the 2024 changes, it will count as your box of your discipline, right? So you won't take a discipline because you already passed BEC. Keep in mind, it doesn't matter if you sit for it, you have to pass it, and it has to be within that 18 months. Once we get into 2024 in the new exam, the old exam's gone. So they're not doing a like, well, I started the process in 2023 and I didn't pass BEC, so now I should be able to take my version of BEC in 2024. No, BEC will no longer be in existence, okay? So to consider all of the different pathways. So whether you sit now, soon, or in the future, we've got a plan and track for you. So what does that look like? So if you're eligible to sit now, right? And when I say now, sit before the changes. Pass all four parts of the CPA exam, get it done out of the way. All of this 2024 talk is irrelevant to you and you don't have to worry about it. So you'll avoid the changes, you enjoy licensure sooner, you're well on your way. You can imagine a lot of our partner firms, if folks are in the firms and still haven't passed the exam, we're going in there now and we're kind of stirring things up to get it out of the way. Now, more of the pathways are going to be for our transitions. So if you're eligible to sit now or in 2023 and BEC concepts are easier for you after you take a look at them, kind of go to our website, take a look exactly what's in BEC, and if they feel easier for you, then you will start to hear more and more common. The directive is going to be get BEC out of the way. Just do BEC first. Typical road, if you guys have heard anything, what advice have you been told on the current exam? Which of the four parts should you try to do first? Have you heard anything?
The big one.
The big one? Which one is that? FAR. Very common. Most of the time, everyone will say, when it comes to CPA exam, get FAR out of the way first. And that typically would be the direction that we would be sharing, with the exception that since we're going through changes, every once in a while when the exam changes, we alter the path. We're going to be recommending BEC first for many candidates if BEC concepts come a little bit easier to you. Okay, because then you avoid the disciplines. Next scenario. You're strong in technology, but you struggle in some of the BEC concepts. Well, then you might not want to do BEC first and get it out of the way. You might want to avoid that one. And instead, you might want to take ISC in 2024 instead, right? So maybe BEC isn't my path to get out of the way first, and I would rather take ISC in the new CPA exam model. Keep going here. Scenario 3, FAR seems overwhelming. Like you're just sitting here and you're like, it just sounds overwhelming. That's the one I hear all the horror stories about. Well, you might want to pass FAR in 2024. So you might want to kick FAR into the new exam if you can, because FAR is going to get a little bit, I don't want to say easier. You'll see more of the complicated. What's happening, remember, as FAR is being split up, most of FAR is staying with the core, but then some of the more advanced stuff is going up into the bar section. So it's going to get a bit lighter, essentially. So it may not be as intense as it is now. So that could be a consideration if you're a little worried about FAR. Let's go scenario 4. If you can pass some sections before 2024, so you're like, okay, I can pass some. You might also want to consider passing reg or audit in 2024 because of the same scenario. Some of the reg currently has the highest pass rates on all 4 parts of the CPA exam. We just got our update on that yesterday as well. And that audit is getting more and more attention. And so it may become a little bit more difficult in 2024, right? So remember we said FAR core may become a little bit easier because some of the material is going off and up. Audit is the audit core. It could be getting more heavy material in the core part. I'm talking a lot of different strategies here, so I do welcome any questions you guys might have at that. But this is why it's because when you've got stuff coming off and on and moving around, it's all still there, but that's where you might want to plan your strategy a little different based on what you know. Okay. Now, if you can sit in after 2024, so you're well beyond the 2024 exam, you're like, none of this transition policy even affects me. You're just going to want to start with your most difficult section and then choose the discipline after the core. I say this is Charlotte's advice. It can go one of 2 ways. You can knock out your most difficult section first so that you have it done because your 18-month clock starts counting. So people ask that. Once you pass your first section, that's when your 18 months count. If you do not pass the other 3 parts within 18 months, you start to lose exam credit. So you don't lose everything, they just start falling off and you start losing exam credit. I might also say if every single thing about this exam makes you panic and you sit here and you go, I'm a good student, I know my stuff, I'm excited about my career, I am not a good test taker. Like no matter how you cut this, I am not a good test taker. And when I think about the CPA exam, it feels like the ultimate test and I'm just nervous about it. I might recommend you start with the first part that you feel the most confident about. Get in, get past the 75, understand the testing center, understand the rhythm of sitting for the exam, and go after the other 3 with confidence. Okay, so that could be another scenario that's not included here. Any questions on the 24? Does everyone feel like they got a little bit more of a grasp on the 2024 core plus discipline? You know, your different discipline sections are. How many of you, based on what I just said, will be in the transition? You will be starting at least 1 part in 2023. Okay. Feel free to ask me any questions, especially afterwards for that. And then who's my 2024 and beyond again? Just, all right. Thank goodness I'm not dealing with this. I'm just going to be in the new exam. Okay. All right. So let's talk about efficient study habits. So I'm going to kind of talk a little bit more about the time management now that we got the content out of the way. Is time management. So we also survey our students every year and we ask them, you know, looking back on your CPA exam experience, your CPA review experience, what were kind of your biggest obstacles or what were your biggest hurdles that got in your way? And the top answers typically are 1 is the content of the exam is intimidating and it's difficult. 2, time management, time to study, time management on the exam, time management dealing with the application process. 3rd, procrastination, right? I kept kicking it down for a better day and it kept getting out of my reach. And then the 4th is typically expense, the overall expenses of all of it. It's expense to sit for the exam, but then also the expense when you don't pass and have to keep retaking it. Out of the 4, time management's number 1 as the biggest hurdle for most students with the exam, more than the difficult content, because they're like, I came from a great program, I'm learning in the review course, it's the time management that I could not get under my belt. So you're gonna wanna create a study plan. Our course, for example, everything that you can study on the go, so you can get every aspect of our course on the go as you're running, driving in the car, you can also be studying for CPA review. And then you want to use data-driven insights. So you don't want to make it a guessing game, like, am I ready? Do I really feel good about this concept? You're going to want to use the data, and that's going to tell you, no, you are tracking really strong on this concept, you're ready to go. Okay, so how to set up for success as far as best practices. Oops. Okay, so the first is you're going to want to build a support system. So what does that mean? You're going to want to let everybody know and have a champion or two. Let a significant other, family, friends, roommates, work, everybody know I am now game on studying for the CPA exam. They'll back off the pressure a little bit, right? Like, I'm sorry, yes, I'm gonna spend 3 hours on my Friday night studying depreciation. That's what's happening with my life right now, okay? But it's a moment in time and I'm working towards a goal and I'm not gonna let anything get in the way of that. Your champions will drop off the random cup of coffee. Your champions will ask you if they can bring your lunch. At work, your champions are going to be rooting for you, saying, when did you study, or when are you scheduled to sit for your first section? And they're going to be the ones that are going to bring you those big, beautiful CPA balloons and a cake when you pass all 4 parts. Build a support system, and if anyone's not in your support team, they need to take a pause for 18 months. Clear your calendar and distractions. If it can wait, it should. This is going to be your top priority, and you're going to want to get it out of the way as soon as possible. Plan to study at the same time every day. Keep your best practices that you all have right now, keep them, right? How many of you like to study in the morning? You're like, I'm fresh, I'm good to go, the morning's my time. Okay? How many of you, it's like mid-afternoon, for some reason you really get in a rhythm between 2 and 5 o'clock? All right, how many are my late nighters? Right, typical. I'm an early morning. I used to be a late night when I was in school. Whatever your environment is now, if you like to listen to music, you don't like to listen to music, you want to be at home, you want to be, studying in outside the business building, wherever that is, what that looks like, try to replicate that when you're still fresh as a student, as you're going through the exam, because it's an environment that works for you. You're going to customize your study planner with UWorld. I'll show that in a moment. Schedule your exams early. Prometric Testing Center is where you sit for the exam. As soon as you start meeting the eligibility and you go through the process, you want to schedule your exams early. Why? They can get crowded. And the last thing that you want is to have to go further away for a testing center when you've got one close to you, but all the reservations got booked up. Okay. So a great example for my grads that might start studying for the exam and sitting in the summertime. Okay. So you graduate in May, you start the process. That's when they're typically the most crowded. So you want to get a jump on it. Why? First of all, you're competing with everybody else who's also just graduated. There are other test takers at these centers. It's not just accounting. But in accounting, in May, the professionals, what did they just finish with? They just all finished with busy season. So they just all got done with busy season. So if they're supervisor and they are in the firm and they haven't passed the exam yet, they're going to have to talk like, busy season's over. I didn't expect you to study during busy season, but now that it's behind us, how are you doing on those exam studies and getting started? So the summer really pushes a lot of your busy season professionals and all of our grads. Oh, and you can schedule your advising session. So definitely you guys are going to want to take my card. I'm your CPA exam advisor. So if after this you're either overwhelmed or you're saying, I have a really unique circumstance, I really want to talk to you about my particular path, there's 30 minutes or less, you just email me, we jump on the phone, and I would love to help advise you a little bit further on your CPA exam game plan. So here is a study planner. I don't want to overwhelm everybody. We have study plans at UWorld that help you pass the exam in 3 months, all 4 parts in 3 months. We would not offer it unless people ask for it. 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and 12. Typical UWorlders pass all 4 parts in 9 months. That tends to be the most comfortable for them, okay? This is an example of a 3-month study planner. I need to talk with our marketing team to get a different example because it looks like a lot, because it is. But if you want to pass all 4 parts of the CPA exam in 3 months, I mean, that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be studying the whole time. So what this does is this breaks out 2 to 3 hours every day of study time in order to hit your goal to pass in 3 months on this particular plan, okay? What a 6-month or a 9-month or 12-month looks like is you have more days off, or you can just do like an hour every day, so it breaks it up a little bit more realistically. So now I'm going to switch over into a little bit more of UWorld. So within UWorld, and there's some information on this flyer, especially with time management, where we really excel, is we include what's called our Smart Path data here with our technology. What is Smart Path in our course with our students? Smart Path is going to constantly read, as you're working in the material, your comprehension and the volume of questions you're practicing. Both are so important for students. The reason why is we're going to provide you 2 targets based on students that have already passed the CPA exam before you, right? So we've mined all of the data to see exactly what they were doing and how they were doing it in our course, and we're going to provide that data path for you. 2 targets, why 2? One, a lot of students think that the way you pass the CPA exam and the way you study is you do massive question drills over and over and over and over, and I need to practice thousands and thousands and thousands of questions. There is a point of depreciation. You can overstudy, you can burn yourself out, you can start to lose the information because you're overdoing it, okay? So SmartPath is gonna say on a particular concept, so like basic concepts and financial statements, here's your target number of questions that you need to be practicing in order to hit this target for this particular topic. On the other hand, it's gonna read for your comprehension, your knowledge. As you're going through those questions, how are you performing on the quizzes? Are you showing that you're able to understand them and appropriately answer them correctly? Why is that important? What happens if you build a quiz with 10 questions in our program and you get 10 for 10, you get 100%. You're like, moving on, know this concept, crushed it, 100%. What SmartPath is going to tell you is, although you did perform very well showcasing comprehension on this particular area, you have not seen all the different types of questions the AICPA may put in front of you on this concept. So you're really mastering the material. You need to see more so you can see the different types. Once you hit both targets, you're showing strong comprehension and target the right amount. SmartPath will tell you it is time to move on comfortably. You are showing the trend to successfully pass this particular section and move on to the next chapter in the material. That is how students in our program pass 3 times faster. You may be tracking on the study planner. So think of the study planner as like your physical map. This is going to be your GPS in your car, right? This is reading you live time. And so you may say, well, I haven't studied every single question on revenue recognition, right? It doesn't matter. SmartPath is telling you have done what you need to do in order to successfully pass the revenue recognition that you're going to see on the CPA exam. You'll see right here, and when you're not hitting your targets, like, hey, Charlotte, you're doing a lot of questions, but you're not really showing strength on the comprehension, it's going to tell you exactly what to do in the program. Either go practice some more questions, watch the lecture videos again, read the textbook, but you're not going to be on your own trying to figure out where you're saying, great, I'm not getting my scores, now what? It's going to specifically tell you what you need to do to close the gap. Lastly, if we do study smarter and pass faster, I covered the pass faster, you're going to want to study smarter. So with UWorld, our pinnacle differentiation, I really recommend that you take a look at our free trial. No 2 CPA review courses are exactly alike. We all get the same AICPA blueprints, but what we do with them is dramatically different. Here is an example. So the question is, which functions do freely fluctuating exchange rates perform? That's the question that we're all given that we then write answers for. This is an answer explanation from another CPA review provider, and it came across our desk because the student was in like a CPA exam cohort chat room and was venting, not understanding this concept and was struggling with this answer. So here's how another one of the CPA review providers answered it. It says the choice C is correct. As we have mentioned in our explanation of other questions, sometimes questions that are released by the AICPA are released because they will never be used again, or were test questions that didn't make it into the reoccurring database. This may be the case with this question, but it is a good learning experience for candidates as questions like this may appear on any exam. According to the examiners, it appears that freely fluctuating currency exchange rates correct a lack of equilibrium in the balance of payments. It is clear that none of the other choices is correct. It is unclear what the statement in C even means, but it is the correct answer, and we know that none of the others are correct. Okay. Frustrating, right? So the student was like, help, can someone please tell me what is going on here? I'm not understanding. So I'm going to take the same question. I know it's a little bit hard to see, and I'm going to show you how UWorld approaches it. So you'll see here, same question, freely fluctuating exchange rates perform which of the following functions? The first thing, if you noticed it, on A, B, C, or D, is we're going to provide you some data as you're going through it. That percentage is telling you what percent of other students in UWorld are selecting that very same answer. Why? Well, there's comfort in numbers, and it can also show if it's a more difficult question. Remember that last answer said it was clear that none of the other choices were correct. Well, our data is showing that 19% of students chose C, the wrong answer. So it's obviously not clear. Okay, so it is a more difficult question. Beyond that, across the board within our program, all of our students are going to see a visual right out of the gate. So it's an illustration, a graph, a chart. How many of you identify to some degree as a visual learner? Okay, so that's a real attractive piece of our course. You can see here, even we got a fancier picture on there, but we also believe the power of visual learning. And so we have an entire illustration team that is drawing these illustrations for our students in our CPA prep program. Beyond that, we're going to provide a thorough answer explanation, providing the why. Why is the correct answer correct? The what and the how as you're, these are your critical thinking skills, right? So we need to help make sure that you understand how to properly answer this question on the exam. You'll also see here what was missing from the other example, why choice B, choice C, and choice D with their own explanation are wrong. Because this is actually sometimes the most powerful. If I got it wrong, I need to be corrected at what I'm doing wrong and why, because I clearly thought I was getting it right before I move on and continue on the concept. So this is something often absent and that is very important to UWorld that we include it. And then the things to remember, so a big takeaway, and way down here, we absolutely include lecture videos. They're all taught for the most part by Roger Phillips, CPA, CGMA. So you can watch the lecture videos, then practice the questions, or you can practice the questions and then jump straight to the lecture videos, depending on how you like to study. This is my goal. Our goal at UWorld is to see this on LinkedIn, see you celebrating this particular student passed all 4 parts of the CPA exam. You can see she passed all 4 parts on the first attempt, over 8 months of test taking and 11 months studying, right? So for me, the big one there is not necessarily the time, but that she passed all 4 parts and passed all 4 parts the first time. So last, of course, I gave you all some information. I know everybody's kind of at a different stage as far as thinking about the CPA exam, thinking about CPA review. I do want to let you know anytime that we're on campus, we do offer a promotional opportunity to enroll in our Elite Unlimited course, so it never expires. So it's a great way to get a jump on the great price. It's always going to be a better price than what you're going to find on the website. It includes everything that you need to pass the exam, Smart Path, all of the physical textbooks, online books, full mobile app, the advising session with me or my colleagues, and then of course all of those really great answer explanations. So definitely write that down. There's a code there for you too. This code expires December 31st, so it's a fall 2022 promotion opportunity. Again, knowing that many of you may not be exactly ready in the process or somewhere in between, I would be happy to answer any questions on what that might look like. But that is for our Elite Unlimited that never expires and stays with you. So the last thing is, of course, I do encourage you, please connect with me on LinkedIn. Consider this your official invite. That's often where I'll promote scholarships, anything that we hear about the changes. We are meeting with the AICPA next week to get some more updates. So that's typically the first place that I will go when I have any of those updates for my future test takers. So with that, anybody have any questions?
Are you allowed to take 2 back-to-back without waiting for the results?
Yeah. Yeah, so what you would want to do, the only thing that I'll recommend is, we didn't cover it today, when you pay for a part, you get what's called your notice to schedule or your NTS. That will expire in 6 months. So as soon as you pay, you have to plan to sit for the exam in 6 months. So I hesitate, and some students will think like, what better way to get my act together than to pay for all 4 parts? Because if I pay for all 4 parts, I have to sit for all 4 in the next 6 months. Sounds good in theory. Why would you do that to yourself, right? So typically what students will do is they'll pay for 2 parts and have 6 months open for this, and pay for 2 parts and have 6 months open for here so that they can give their space. I've even seen students pay for like all 4 and have 4 different opening tracks. Unless you're really committed to pass all 4 parts in the 6 months, don't waste your money or your employer's money if they're paying for it by being a little overzealous on that. Any other questions? Yeah.
So if we graduate in 2024, do you recommend us buying it now and studying for it, or waiting till we graduate and then buying it?
Yes. So I might wait a little bit longer. And typically students will purchase about 6 months to a year out. I know that even seems an extreme. A lot of my students that purchase it in the earlier stages like to use components in their courses, so we have a lot of material that correlates to what they're learning in class. The good news here though is that it is an unlimited course access, so it's going to be with you and continue to change throughout the next few years. Yeah, but if you're like a 2025, I mean, I'm not going to say, I'm going to false through that. Any other questions? All right. Everybody feel a little bit more confident about what's going on with the CPA exam? Hopefully not too overwhelmed. All right. Remember, 75 to pass. I'm sure you all know a lot of CPAs. No offense to them, but they're probably, they're not genius status, right? So keep it in mind, maybe some of them are, keep in mind, it's absolutely doable. You just have to have a really good study plan, and stay motivated throughout to pass all 4 parts. Right? Thank you all.
Thank you.